Добрий день, я вітаю всіх, хто приєднався до нас.
Good afternoon. Greetings to everybody who joined us. It's day 236 of the full-scale invasion of Russian occupants, and I want to thank everybody who tells the world about the Russian aggression in Ukraine. I want to introduce our speaker. It's Yevheniia Kravchuk, the Deputy Chair of Verkhovna Rada Committee for Humanitarian and Information Policy, a Deputy Head of the Servant of the People fraction in Parliament. Ms. Yevheniia, we greet you, and we will have very important subject covered today. The establishment of International Tribunal for the crimes of Russian aggression. What are the plans? Will such an international tribunal be established? We saw some decisions taken by the Parliamentary Assembly of PSC, and what are the terms of establishment of such tribunal? Thank you, dear colleagues. I would like to start with the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly resolution, and that resolution adopted the last week. It's a historic resolution. It covers different aspects Ukraine is currently working on as the state. For the first time in the legal field in this resolution, we see it's the resolution which was voted by the 46 members of Europe, mostly of European continent. It includes all the members of the European Union, and within this resolution the Russian regime was first called terroristic, and the actions of the Russians and the political management of the Russian state were called terroristic actions. And today we had another confirmation of this resolution when we had an attack on Kyiv. We have information about 3 casualties resulted from this attack. This gives an option to our president and to everybody who works with our international partners to ask not only for more broad and intense sanctions to be imposed on Russia, but it creates more chance for establishment of such an international tribunal. First, we covered the subject of the establishment of international tribunal back in April, and now the Parliamentary Assembly appealed to the parliaments of the European countries to create it. Why do we need the international tribunal in this format? Well, the last such a tribunal was established for Nuremberg process, where the both political and military management of Germany were persecuted. It doesn't mean that ICC will not work, the International Criminal Court, but the court will complement to the work of International Criminal Court. What's the difference of their operation? The International Criminal Court will cover the crimes, the war crimes, the crimes against humanity, and genocide. And we see that we have more and more testifications that those are the aspects of genocide for the events in Bucha, in Hostomel, but the International Tribunal will cover the subject of aggression, the crime of aggression, the political management of Russia. What's the crime of aggression? It's the mother of all crimes. Those are the actions of political government, the military government, which resulted in war against Ukraine, which then entailed all these mass killings mass attacks, due to which the rockets fall in the center of the Kyiv. And recently we had information promulgated by 3 members of the EU, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, to establish the International Tribunal. We have the work team in Ukraine, led by Mr. Andriy Yermak. It can be either as a treaty, as an agreement between a number of countries, our closest partners. It's obvious that Europe has to play the crucial part in establishment of such tribunal, because this aggression, this war is taking place in the European continent, and is the first time since the World War II the conventional warfare with such a mass casualties. Or it can be an international treaty under the mandate of a certain organization, for example, the Council of Europe, the European Union, or either it can be United Nations, which is least likely, in my opinion, because as we see, the actions of the United Nations Security Councils are blocked by Russia itself, who is the member, but maybe within the General Assembly of United Nations, such resolutions may be adopted. I don't want to forecast anything, but the tribunal itself is not something complicated in terms of investigation or witnessing, because the witnessing is obvious. It will not require some extra, some broad financial investments, because it will be mostly the job of Ukrainian prosecutors, and it will be enough to pick just one judge who will work on this case. And another important issue is how to persecute the propagandists. So the European Council will consider 2 resolutions, one of which will cover propaganda. And in my opinion, it's quite important. Why? Because the propagandists try to cover themselves with the Article 10 about the freedom of speech, about the human rights. Russian propaganda has nothing to do with freedom of speech. And their resolution initiated by the Ukrainian delegation, its goal will be to confirm it. You know, for the first time in the Nuremberg process, and it's quite symbolic that back in October 1946, the propagandists, they were persecuted for the first time during Nuremberg process. Julia Streicher. There are also cases of Rwanda genocide, the radio of Thousand Hills. It was proved that where that radio was broadcasted, the number of victims among Tutsis was 10 times higher. So there is still discussion is how to persecute the top propagandists who influenced the decisions. They may be persecuted by either this international tribunal or international criminal court. But they will be persecuted for sure, because their place is not among the people under sanctions, but they should be persecuted. And the second resolution is the destruction of cultural identity during wars. What we see is not only destruction of the cultural monuments, the cultural and religious heritage, part of the religious or cultural facilities were completely destroyed. only after 24th of February, because we have a number of such facilities destroyed in Crimea as well. But there are some cultural and national identity items destroyed, like the prohibition of education in Ukrainian language in occupied territories, children deported from Ukraine and being educated in Russian language so that they forget Ukrainian language, or Ukrainian books destroyed. Those are the parts of genocide. Those are war crimes, and we will work on the legal grounds, legal factors, so that the people who committed actions against the cultural identity of Ukraine, so that they be punished as well. Who can be included into this international tribunal? This question is still open. Any country who wants to join this process may sign this treaty. Now, as we see the Baltic states, they already declared that they are ready to join this. The circle, this community is open. They will be our partners from the European Union, Great Britain. The question is still open. It's very important to create the compensation mechanism. The resolution of the Parliamentary Assembly of European Council covered this issue too. It will provide the option of compensation to the war victims from the frozen Russian assets abroad, or the assets of the individuals under sanctions. And the items were listed in the resolution. First of all, we had to create the register of these compensation goals, and on the level of international treaty between the countries. For example, Canada was the first to adopt a law which enables the Canadian government to transfer the funds under sanctions, the frozen funds, to transfer them to the victims, to the country of victims. So Canada may appeal to this mechanism first. And President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who appealed to the Parliamentary Assembly to create this compensation mechanism, he called everybody to join it and to establish the International Tribunal. All the deputies of the Parliamentary Assembly of European Council, they mentioned that the establishment of this tribunal is fair and it's necessary. There will be no end to this war until everybody is punished. It's really the international victory of our delegation, and according to your experience, such establishment of international tribunal, will it take years, or is it going to be a dynamic process? I believe it will be quite real, and we have a lot of help from our armed forces who beat the enemy in the battlefield, because what's most important that we achieved in the understanding of international community, that Ukraine is capable of winning, and it means that the aggressor is supposed to be punished. These are interconnected things. We see that lately the last actions of Russia, they are coming back to it as a boomerang. Upon October 10, upon attack on Kyiv, more and more countries declare that they will provide their anti-aircraft means to Ukraine, and the fairness cannot be reestablished in the world if after everything Russia has done, they will live only isolated but unpunished. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Who can inform Ms. Yevheniia? The situation is such that the government of Russia sits in a bunker, and the propagandists keep spilling all the dirt in the ears of the population. What's the mechanism to pull them out of the bunker? How do we reach them? The tribunal is authorized to provide the apprehension order. So we see the weaker is the regime, and we see that the situation is being changed within Russia Federation. So it's quite probable to expect it to be finalized. But it's important to keep Russia isolated, to maintain the process of isolation of Russia, so that Russia, for example, loses its moral right to be on the United Nations Security Council. And this is one of the areas our international lawyers work on. Not only because Russia violated the United Nations statute, but Russia never actually submitted any documents. They become a part of the Security Council automatically. As to the documents, nobody can find such documents. That's another parallel track that we can use. And now from all the international platforms, we hear declarations that such a tribunal has to be established. It becomes the reality in the perception. It becomes the reality in understanding of the people. It becomes normal that such decisions should be taken. Another question.
It's
Yes, it's okay.
it's still easier for me than Ukrainian.
Але трохи мовлю по-польськи, порозумім.
Круто, дякую. So I would like to ask, like, how do you see the work of this tribunal? Because for now it's quite hard to catch these people who are responsible for all what is going on. It's probably quite similar question to the previous one. Yeah, but is it like more symbolic? Would you like to trace all of the terror that they did to Ukraine and to show it to the world? Is that your purpose? Like, when you think this tribunal should start to work?
Well, of course, I think personally that it should start working, tomorrow and sign the treaty. It's obvious, and also about how it should be conducted. Of course, the victory of Ukraine will make it happen faster. But of course, the decision of the court could be, taken, for example, in Hague, where, maybe it will happen in Hague. And finally, those who were taking political and military decisions will be taken to court physically. But the decision could be taken anyway.
Я дякую вам. Дякую, пані Євгенія, що долучилися до нашого ефіру.
Thank you, Ms. Yevheniia, for joining us. I will remind you we had Yevheniia Kravchuk with us. Thank you for following us. Believe in our armed forces and keep working for victory. Hang with us. Watch our announcements. See you next time.